Okay, so welcome everybody to our first Ask Tom office hours about database upgrade and migration. This is a new initiative that we have within database product management to kind of give customers an opportunity to interact with us, ask questions, get information. The format today is going to be that we've received a couple of questions about upgrade, and we've prepared responses for those that we will present. And then we have open Q&A. In future months, because these office hours will be held every, third Wednesday of the month, in future months, we may present on various topics, similar to how Mike blogs on various topics occasionally, whatever we think seems to be important. Or we may just do open Q&A depending on how we're feeling, how much time we have to prepare things, and so on. Just a reminder that these sessions are being recorded, so everybody on the line, I want you to be aware of that. These are being recorded for future use. And at the end, we'll show you where to get our slides from today. So Mike, you want to move the slides forward, and I'll introduce myself and then let Mike do him. So my name is Roy Swonger. I've been with Oracle now for actually a little over 23 years. I joined in December of '94 with the DEC RDB acquisition. I'm Vice President for Database Upgrade and Utilities. And click one there, Mike. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, so an area very well known for the snow. In fact, the town I grew up in was one that last year got 60 inches of snow in one weekend. One more click. And work in the Nashua office, where we have about 500 people here in Nashua, New Hampshire, just over the line in tax-free New Hampshire. And developed here include a good data guard, spatial, and so on. And now I'll let Mike introduce himself.
Yeah, and hello everybody. So I'm Mike Dietrich. I'm the Master Product Manager for Database Upgrades and Migrations. I work for Roy for almost 10 years now. So Roy, soon our 10th anniversary, 1st of April. And slides and a lot of other stuff is on the upgrade blog, so MikeDietrich.de.com. And if you would like to follow me on Twitter, MikeDietrich.de is the Twitter handle. And I promise no politics, no sports, and no food porn on Twitter, just technology stuff. So, and I think we can start with the first question we've got.
Sure. So the first question was about, actually both of our questions in email were about upgrading eBusiness Suite databases. And in this particular one, it's upgrading the database from 11.204 to 12.1, and also moving to presumably a new server going from Linux 5 to Linux 6. So we do have some good resources for you on that. The best resource for eBusiness Suite is Stephen Chan's blog. Stephen Chan runs a blog about eBusiness Suite technology, and particularly the underpinnings of eBusiness Suite, not so much about how to use this or that application, but all of the different components and tools and layers in the stack for eBusiness Suite. And if you go there, there are a lot of different subtopics, but in particular for this question, at the top of the blog, there is upgrade recommendations, and there's a very nice chart on that page which shows you for each part of the eBusiness Suite environment, whether it's the toolkit, Oracle Forms, the database. It has links to, first of all, what is supported, such as database 11.204, 12.1, and so on, but then also will take you directly to the notes for the upgrade of that item. For example, there is a whole best practice section on how to upgrade the database in an eBusiness Suite environment, because there are a few particular things you need, such as your interop patches and so on. Another thing I found there was a very nice section on how to test your eBusiness Suite environment after an upgrade. Of course, with an upgrade to the database, you might expect some behavior changes, performance changes, and so on. So Stephen gives you a set of advice for what tools, techniques, what to test for, how to test after your upgrade. Next slide, please. The question about moving from Linux 5 to Linux 6 At a high level, for as far as Oracle is concerned, as long as the operating system is supported, if you're going to a new version of the operating system, there's really nothing to do when you're migrating your database from one system to another. When you upgrade the operating system under the database, you may have to do some relinking, but if you're going to migrate, our general recommendation is to use a DataGuard physical standby. The reason for doing that is it removes all of the downtime of migrating the database, either by copying files or by taking your RMAN backup and then restoring it onto the new hardware. And a physical standby is fully supported for eBusiness Suite. We'll mention later about how logical standby, transient logical, and Golden Gate aren't fully supported for upgrade purposes for eBusiness Suite, but a physical standby is for disaster recovery purposes or for migration purposes. So the really nice thing about this is that you can easily build your standby using, say, RMAN duplicate for standby from active database. It'll automatically build the standby on the new hardware for you. Then you can test this many times. You could stop your redo apply, activate the standby, upgrade it, test it, throw it away, rebuild it again. In terms of licensing, because people always ask about that, remember that a standby doesn't require licensing unless it is up for more than 10 days in a calendar year. So if you test something for a week and throw it away, you don't have to license that standby. So this is all good reasons to use a standby to migrate to new hardware, even with that new operating system version. It's less time, very easy to test, almost zero impact on your source database, and you keep that original database around as a fallback option if something goes wrong. So that's my answer for question one. I don't know if Mike has anything else to add.
No, fine.
Okay. So on to question two.
So question two actually was an upgrade scenario again with EBS, so an old Solaris 10 server with database 10.203. So
oh, sorry, that was 11.203. That's a typo on my part.
Oh, it's a typo. Okay, so it's 11.203. Let me just. So, oops. So now 11.203. We quickly upgraded that just within a second. That's awesome. DataGuard physical standby in place, and the target is a new Solaris 10 server, database 12.102. And I have to move this a bit to the side and ensure DataGuard is in place. So this is basically the scenario. Now, oops. Oh. Okay. So our proposal would be, first of all,
this was the customer proposal for what they were thinking.
Would you mind to go on, Roy?
Sure. So sure, I'll go through this. So. And this was a great, nicely detailed question because this particular person had already come up with all of these steps for building building a new second standby, so using fan out to go to the new server, and then stop the log shipping, shut down the standby, install the software, upgrade the primary, because that's how you're going to perform the upgrade on the primary. That leaves the standby as a fallback possibility. And then after the upgrade, run this code level checker to identify missing packages. And you see it says see note there, and I didn't reproduce the note, but the note was that they'd done their homework and found that that tech code level checker unfortunately does not run properly under an 11.203. So ideally, when you're upgrading eBusiness Suite, you would want to check for those missing patches in advance. However, in this case, they can't. So they're going to do that right after the 12C upgrade, apply the missing prereq patches, if any, and then start the standbys, do the log shipping, which will implicitly upgrade the standbys and make that new server, new primary, and then verify everything, shut down, and remove the old primary server, which would have been the second standby. So the idea is, because DataGuard rolling upgrade is not supported for a eBusiness Suite, you can at least use that standby to migrate to the new hardware, but then you still do have the downtime for doing the upgrade. So based on this, we had 2 levels of recommendation.
Oops.
The first one's pretty simple, and I put it in red here, and that's just moving the install of software up before you get any downtime. And this is good practice for any case when you're upgrading the database. Don't do your software install during downtime, and there are several reasons for this. First of all, the install takes time. And just to lay down the bits on the disk and get everything linked and all, you're talking several minutes of downtime at least. But on top of that, when we think about installing 12c, generally, anytime you're installing a new version, it's not just the base version. You're going to then do patching and other things. And you want to make sure all of that goes smoothly. You don't want to be in the middle of downtime and then go to run data patch, and now you find out you've got a patch conflict or need a new version of a one-off patch. So you can do all your installs in advance and do that before there's any downtime. So that's one way of optimizing this. More optimal would be to really take advantage of that new hardware and that second standby to take some of the variability out of this process. We'll still do that install first, and then you set up the standby, but then take advantage and use that as a snapshot standby to test the upgrade, run the code level checker on a 12c system, and check the install of any missing patches. That way you can make sure that you have the right patches, you can get them, have them handy to install, make sure that performance is good on your system after the upgrade, and so on. Then you shut it down, flashback, resynchronize, and go back into the upgrade. Mike, do you want to mention anything?
Just to add here, because it's a very common technique and very, very useful, you can repeat that step, of course. So you can, once you flashed back to your standby and activated a standby, brought it back in sync, maybe next week, it's in sync with the production again, and you can run this test over and over again. So we had actually customers doing this 4, 5, 6 times until they were really confident that everything is in good shape. And then for the final cutover, they repeat that step, but they know that things go well at this point. So using the standby here is a very common, very really recommended technology or methodology in any case where you get a new hardware piece of the same operating system family. So that's quite useful, and we highly recommend that. It takes out a lot of risk and is easy to test, easy to verify. And just one thing to add to Roy, with the 10 days rule, I think this applies only to failover clusters. But if you want to be really on the safe side, because we don't require licensing, ask your salesperson up front to get test licenses, just to be on the safe side. It's usually enough to have the email conversation and your Oracle sales counterpart saying, yes, this is fine, I just noted that down. Just in case if during that process you get a license audit, that you're on the safe side. So just talk to your salesperson first, but we don't require licensing. A test license is fully okay, and it doesn't cost you anything extra.
In terms of licensing, I should mention, you're going to new hardware. The odds are very good you're going to have more cores in that hardware. So that is something to be aware of as well. We see this as customers move from a 5-year-old system where you had maybe a 6-core chip, and now the latest Exadata has 22 cores on a chip, that kind of thing.
Okay, perfect.
And the last bit is where to go for information. So Mike, you can take that away or show the log line.
Sure. Shall I? What do you mean with take it away? Just take the slide away, or?
No, I mean you can.
Okay. So upgrade slides, much more like we have this huge slide deck, which is, let me say that, not updated for 18c yet. So we are in the process of doing this, adding a few new cool features which are in 18c. But at the moment, you get the comprehensive slide deck with 560 slides or something like that, and many, many more slides. So whenever we present at conferences and stuff like that, you'll just find it on mikedietrich.de.com and go to the slides button, and then you should find them there. I think that's enough for the introduction. Roy, what do you think?
I think so.
Shall we ask for open questions? Because one person asked up front.
Time for questions and answers. And if you're shy about speaking or don't want to be recorded speaking, you can also put them in chat, and we are happy to answer them there as well. And don't forget to unmute. So, any questions? So Anil, you had a question earlier, am I correct?
Yeah, yes, right. This is not exactly related to upgrade, but this is related to 12c upgrade script like catcon.pl script. So
Okay.
can we use this script to run normal SQL statements against all PDBs? Can we use this script to run?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that the catcon script was meant as kind of a generic script to run SQL scripts or even individual SQL statements against multiple PDBs. So if you look at the arguments to that script, and I don't know if Mike, if you have that slide from the deck, it probably takes too long to bring it up, but you can actually pass into catcon an individual SQL statement right on the command line and run that on all your PDBs. You can also select a set of PDBs to run a script or command with catcon. And what catcon will do is it will run those scripts in parallel across multiple PDBs at a time. So here, Mike's got that. This is an example, by the way, of the slides that you can get from our huge deck with a lot of detail, as you can see here. And if you look at the catcon arguments at the end, the --x, you can just give it an individual SQL statement. So you could use catcon to just do something like, select count star from user dollar just to find the number of users in each PDB or something silly like that. Run an actual script.
Shall we give a quick example for that?
Sure.
Sure, because when you like to execute, let's say the pre-upgrade fixups.sql.
Just to know the status of all the PDBs. That is where I need actually when I do health check for all servers, all databases inside PDBs. So.
Oh yeah, that would work.
Yes. So let me just give you that quick example. So it's always important to use the Oracle Perl, not your OS Perl. And then catcon.pl requires a few commands to be mandatory. So you call catcon.pl, which is in the RDBMS admin directory. Here I say -n1. This is undocumented still for whatever reason, but it makes just one worker work and just one log file being written. Then you have to specify with -d for directory, the directory where the script you'd like to execute is sitting in. This is mandatory. Then -l is not mandatory. It's the logging direction or directory, but I recommend it highly to set it somewhere else than your working directory, because otherwise you get all the logs in RDBMS admin, which after a while looks pretty nasty. And then mandatory again, the -b option, which is the basic name for the log files. So my log file here will be named preupfix0 for the first worker.log. And this all to execute a script. And here it is an Oracle script, but of course you can use catcon.pl for all your scripts and much more, or as Roy explained also, to do simple SQL against the database. The thing you have to be careful with is that your PDBs should be open once you execute things in that. And you have also the -c options, which allow you to run that script here in a specific container or more than one specific container. So you have an inclusion or exclusion list with -c, an inclusion list. So you specify the containers you'd like to run the script or whatever you have in, or the C, which runs it everywhere except for the containers you specify. So if you would say -C $root, then you would run the script in all containers except for the $root. Okay?
Yeah,
okay,
excellent. Thanks, Mike.
Well, thank you for the question. We also have a few questions coming in from chat.
If you don't mind, can I go with another question?
Okay, sure. We'll get to the chat ones in a second.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So this is regarding PDB clone. Okay. Whenever we do PDB refresh, So what happening here, if we run any archelog backup on source database, that PDB clone is failing due to some missing archelog. If it is 500 GB PDB, if it fails, I need to re-clone one more time that complete PDB. Is there a way to apply that missing archelog on target?
Oh.
Because we need to comment archive backup job on source when we are doing this refresh. Otherwise, scheduled archive job is running and that archive is missing. So even we can restore that archive on target server, there is no way to apply that archive on that single PDB.
I'm stumped on that one.
Nope.
To be honest. I think that one, hopefully the multi-tenant guys will have office hours, and I would ask them.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, hi, this is Ma'am. All I can suggest to this gentleman is he might be able to actually register the missing archive lock in the database. So he needs to copy it over and then get into low level and then register that missing archive lock, and then it should pick it up automatically.
No, see, that is coming outside. It is failing PDB creation, and in alert log it is saying like this PDB is unusable. Please drop this PDB and recreate. So there is no way to, because we have few more PDBs sitting in same server, and those PDBs are coming from different containers basically.
Okay. As Roy and I can't answer this question, I can ask you to drop me that question via email. So mike.dietrich@oracle.com, and I'll forward this to the multi-tenant team, and I'll get you an answer back from them. Okay? That's easier.
Yeah, sure, Mike.
Because otherwise
I will tweet you.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's go to the chat because we've got 4 questions up there from Daniel asking about a sneak peek for 18C upgrades. And what has changed? What should we expect, whether in terms of faster upgrades, DBA-free upgrades? Surprisingly for 18C, almost nothing has changed for upgrade. Remember, 18C is really 12.202. So about as much as you would expect to change in a patch set. Now, we do have some pretty major things coming in upgrade, but I think you won't see them until 19. Maybe in an interim release of some scripts before then. But Mike, can you think of any major or any changes in the upgrade space for 18?
In the upgrade space right now, not. But I mean, I'm not sure if you want to talk about what we are doing right now and which will...
No, we're not going to talk futures because I don't know when they'll be available.
Okay.
But we have some really, between us and the multi-tenant folks, there are some significant new things coming in this calendar year for upgrade to make upgrades a lot faster, but we can't really talk about those yet.
So Daniel, as I see you in a few weeks, I'll update you in person when we meet each other. So that'll be easier.
And that's what you get when you're a reference customer, folks.
Yes.
Mike updates you in person. The second question is, this is one we're going to get a lot. 18C has been released on Exadata already. Do we recommend installing 18C or sticking with 12.2 for the moment, and for how long? So this actually, there's some news here that hasn't been widely broadcast, I think. I don't know if you blogged about this yet, Mike, but we made a decision last week about one of the questions that customers have had about our new release model. And that question was, okay, you say that a release, like say 12.2, will be supported for 2 years after the next release, like 18, comes along. So what does that 2 years mean? Or when does that 2-year clock start ticking? And our decision was made on Thursday in a fairly high-level executive meeting that the 2 years of support for 12.201 will, that clock starts ticking when 18C is downloadable on all platforms, which is expected to be 18.3 in July, 18.3.0 in July. So that means if you're on 12.2 right now, you will have until July of 2020 you'll have support until then. That should be our last release update for 12.2. So if 12.201 is working for you right now, there's no reason to rush into 18. And then, as a matter of fact, you might just sit there comfortably and say, aha, I don't have to upgrade until 19 is out. And 19 is going to be a long-term supported release with another 5 or 6 years. Now, if there are significant bug fixes or certain new features in 18 that you want, then what I would suggest is, if you have Exadata or ODA should be out soon, download it for testing now and plan on, if you really want those features, go live on the first or second release update for 18. Generally, that will include bug fixes that we found perhaps late in the process but couldn't get in, especially ones for our Exadata certification testing that we do. Generally, that first update will include a lot of Exadata-specific bug fixes on top of the base release. So that would be my advice. What do you think, Mike?
Yes, same here.
Okay.
And generally, if you are sitting on 11.2 right now, which still some customers are, then we recommend that you go straight to 12.201. It's very proven. All the experiences we have with customers in the field there so far are really, really, really positive. Just from the bug fixing side, whenever we check with larger customers, most of the things they found in 12.102 are clearly fixed in 12.2. And the process so far with all the reference customers we worked on their go lives with 12.201 is pretty smooth. Almost no issues. I wouldn't say no issues. There are still a few tiny nits. Of course, it's software and a complex piece of software, but compared to what customers saw when they started with 12.102, it's way more smooth and really, really good release, a very stable release, especially.
And particularly, the adaptive features in the optimizer has been fixed in 12.2.
Yeah.
There are workarounds and patches you can apply in 12.1 now, but for 12.2 you can just take the defaults and it works.
Yeah, and just to give you one example in addition, we recently checked for a very large customer who is currently 120 one-off fixes on top of a PSU in 12.102, and 116 of them were fixed in the 12.2 code already. So just 4 were not fixed by that time. And this gives you an idea what we think, and this is cross support and all the experience that we have so far. A very good release to go live with.
Okay, so the next question we have, and this is an interesting case that we also talked about. Mike, you might want to bring up the slide about using physical standby and redo migration here.
Okay.
The question is migrating 11.203 on Red Hat 5 to a new environment where you're going to have 12.2 on Red Hat 7, because unfortunately you cannot install 11.203 on Red Hat 7 to have your standby at 11.203 and migrate quickly. So what would we suggest for minimal downtime in this case? And
takes a bit. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'll give you the background, and Mike will pull up the reference. Basically, what we would suggest is that you install your 12.2 home on Red Hat 7, and then you can still do redo shipping from 11.203 into your 12.2 home. And 12.2 is able to maintain that standby and perform that redo apply onto it as long as you don't open it. You cannot open that database under 12.2 until you are ready to upgrade it. You can open it in upgrade mode only. So there is a MOS note on how to have redo shipping between different versions of a physical standby. And I know Mike is looking for that now.
For the MOS note?
Yeah, for the slide about doing manual redo.
Give me a second. I don't know where it is. That's when you have too many slides. I know that it's there. So just... All right. I have to just move the stuff out here of the screen. So. So this is the MOS node actually. And ignore the fact that it says something about exadata. That really doesn't matter here. It describes when you have source on, let's say, 11.203 and destination on 12 whatever or 11.204. Doesn't really matter, just different versions. And the operating system doesn't allow you to install either version on the other side. And this node clearly describes how to set it up. And as Roy pointed out, in our slide deck, you'll find the entire process described. So when you download the big slide deck in the rack case, we have all the steps how to set up the physical standby, even if your source would be a 10.2 database, how to build up the backup with Armin automatically. And the only piece you have to do in addition in that case, as DataGuard processes can't talk to a different version. So the RFS, the remote file server, and so on, they require the same version on both sides. And so you have to take the role over of the redo shipping master. So you basically set up a cron job and move your redo files over. And once they get received on the destination side, on the higher version, then you just apply the logs with an SQL Plus. So Armin is a pretty basic tool in that case. It does ignore that you have different versions. It just lets you recover the redo there. And once you're in the phase of going forward, then you activate your standby and upgrade it. So it's a pretty smooth process, pretty well documented. And this MOS node here, I think it's case number 2 in the MOS node. This describes exactly the case for exadata, but ignore the fact that it's exadata. It works everywhere.
Actually, Mike, can you bring up slide, I think 149 is the one I was thinking.
Okay.
DataGuard support for heterogeneous, primary, and logical in the same DataGuard config. It's the one that says using physical standby for hardware migration. Yeah, that one. So the one where it says does not require source release on the target hardware. Probably is the same as the case 2 in the slide Mike was talking about. But that one will tell you how to use that manual or the RMAN redo apply there.
Yep.
Also note, by the way, we talk a lot about using standby. It'll even go cross-platform in some cases. We had a very large customer migrate from Windows to Linux using a physical standby. And if you think, well, Windows database, it must be small. That was a 30 terabyte database, and then another 100 terabyte database that they moved using standby very, very nicely. So that would allow you to do the upgrade with just the upgrade as downtime. Next question is migrating Oracle Linux 5 to Linux 7, database 11.204 to 12c, DataGuard, how to minimize downtime as much as possible. DataGuard rolling upgrade.
Yeah.
That would be what I would use, what we also call transient logical standby.
I'll go to the slide in a second. Then we can show it.
Okay, so Mike can talk about that because he's done it a lot, and I would only be talking about what Mike has done, so I'll let him do the talking.
So, slowly, I'm coming closer. Up. There's Golden Gate. Golden Gate, by the way, would be an option as well. So let me show you how that works. So you have a physical standby in place, and actually this is something a lot of customers have. So what we do here is, first step, we set a guaranteed restore point on production. So this is really important because we have to flash back to this guaranteed restore point later on. And this defines also since which versions that work. So your production must be at least 11.106. That is the minimum version. And as soon as you're 11.106 and newer, and in that case you are on a newer version, that works for you. The next step is you build up the logminer dictionary, which is basically one call. It says dbms log standby build, and 30 seconds later you have a logminer dictionary. Then you convert your physical to a logical standby with a clause we introduced in 11.106. It's called keep identity. So the database keeps its identity. It doesn't change because usually for a logical standby, the NID would change. In that case, you keep the DB ID. Then you apply the logs, And now with the logminer dictionary coming over, the log mode changes automatically, and the logminer log mines now the redo logs coming over the redo stream and applies them to the logical standby database. The logical standby database is open for queries and such. What we do with it now is we stop it, we start it in a new Oracle Home in startup upgrade mode, and then we upgrade it, let's say in your case to 12.102, or honestly, I would recommend you 12.2 because of the longer support time frame. Once it is synced afterwards, now with production again, you decide now when downtime starts, and usually at this point, people say now downtime kicks in, and downtime means that you do a switch over, a controlled role exchange between your production and the logical standby. Now it's important that you have set up your application with TUF or fan events or whatever, or at least make sure that your application connects now to the production. The good thing with that switchover is it takes usually 30 seconds or less. So we have a steel customer in Japan, they do the switch over in 8 to 10 seconds because the logical standby is open, and so we don't have to restart anything when we do this switchover. Now we would have a logical standby on our former production site, and we actually don't want to use that as a logical standby. So we flash it back now to this guaranteed restore point. We rewind everything out of the database until the guaranteed restore point. Then we started in the same Oracle Home our production is already running on. And now we use a command we introduced with 11.107. It's called convert to physical, which basically changes one bit in the standby control file and changes that bit from logical to physical standby. Then, once this is done, takes a few seconds, we turn on the log transport. And this means now we are redo apply for a physical standby. We get all the redo logs from the time when we had created a guaranteed restore point, including the upgrade, because you don't upgrade your standby, it gets upgraded via redo apply. And as it is redo apply, this goes fairly quick. So a few minutes later, your physical standby should be in sync. And one special thing here, as we do a transient standby, we have to revert now to the original setup. So we have to do a second switch over. And this takes now a minute or less usually, maybe 2 minutes in worst case, depending on your SGA size, because now we have to restart. So we have to revert into the original setup. And recently somebody asked me, why do we have to revert? That has to do with the incarnations in the database. If you stay in the previous setup without that switch over, you will get a problem later on when you try the next logical standby rolling upgrade or transient upgrade. So that's why I have to revert back. And this is a common process. We learn from time to time that customers do this with their most important 75 databases for years already. And it's a proven process. It works. And we extended that in 12.201 with a package in the database called DBMS Rolling, which automates most of these things. But if you use DBMS Rolling, which gives you full support via Cloud Control as well, you have to make sure that you have active data guard. So for the basic process here, manual or with shell scripts we offer via white paper. I think that's on the next slide. The shell scripts in the white paper, you can do this flawless without extra licensing. But if you use the DBMS Rolling package, we introduced in 12.102 actually, not 12.201, sorry for that, 12.102, then you need active data guard license for that. Okay.
Great. Good. And Pete asks, clever, but from step 6 in that process, aren't we in a single point of failure situation? And that is true if you've got just your 2-node existing data guard, where at a certain point when you have switched over and you haven't yet flashed back, you don't really have that standby in place. If you're worried about that, you could, for example, put in a cascading standby off of your original standby so that when you switch over, you now have a standby from that production. Of course, that requires the extra disk space. Last question here, or actually not last question, got another one here. This is an interesting one. A production system with 2-node rack, Golden Gate active data guard. After upgrade to 12C, an active data guard instance will hang due to one specific parallel query, or query with a parallel hint. It would occur every other day. After restart of active data guard, the query would run in less than 15 seconds. All patches have been applied. It looked like log writer was hanging. Is it something we've heard of? Removal of parallel hinge is working. My simple answer is no, I've not heard of that. And this is something, whenever you have a performance issue like this, I always get suspicious when I hear the word hang, because I've been looking at this a lot from an upgrade perspective. And what you're going to need to do is really analyze this as a performance issue. Like, look at your AWR reports and see, is it really hanging or is it just really slow? I'll give you an example. We have one case that I'm able to use as a really nice sample in a presentation I'm building about diagnosing upgrade issues. If you have bad stats on an eBusiness Suite database, I've got one particular update statement in the upgrade that can run for 10 hours on my little test EBS database, and more, in a normal situation it takes 2 seconds. So it's the kind of thing where you might look at it and say, wow, this is hanging, but it's really just running very slowly because it's got a bad query plan. So what I'm wondering is, first of all, is it really hanging? And if so, on what event? Because the event that it's hanging on will tell you what to do. Is it about lack of disk space for your archive log area on disk? Or are you having some contention there where the managed recovery is somehow causing a deadlock with this parallel query, although I don't know why that would happen? Or is it something else, like maybe you've done enough work that at some point you get stale stats and the query optimizer is going out to lunch? So
and actually what's coming, when I see that, what's coming immediately to my mind is in 12.1 we introduced that feature of multiple log writers. And I would immediately turn off multiple log writers. And the parameter, as far as I remember, is called _use single log writer or something like that. You go to the upgrade blog or just to Google. So the key is really to enable this _use single log writer equals true. And this disables the multiple log writers. So especially in 12.102, there were some issues with the multiple log writers, and still customers ask us if they should now in 12.2 run with the multiple log writers. I still don't see a reason for that unless you have really a multi-tenant deployment with like 50 PDBs or something like that. The log writer is proven bulletproof functionality for many, many years, and you should try the single log writer switch. And if you can't find it, you just drop me an email, because I tried it to find it on a blog quickly. I couldn't do it right now, but it's something, use single log writer true with an underscore up front, and try this, give this a try.
I will definitely send an email, but the thing is, with any underscore parameter, obviously you want to work with Oracle support, and Oracle support kind of had 2 different SRs, one being performance issue, one could being a 12.1 bug. Neither of them were actually going anywhere for 2 months while we were restarting our production ADG instance every other day. The weird thing was, it would only happen after 48 hours or so. The same query, one day runs fine, the next day, no, doesn't, just let it go.
So it could be that you're reaching a log file switch point, or so. What, may I ask what platform you're running?
We're on RHEL 7.
Okay, so it's not AX or HPUX. Okay.
No, we're on RHEL 7, yeah. And we were not able to reproduce it, and we have multiple non-production environments. We were not able to reproduce it in any non-production environment.
Let me say that this is hard to reproduce, but we've seen such issues on Linux as well. Check this. Try it as a recommendation. Neither Roy or I can't solve SRs here, where support has invested work for 2 months. It is just which dawned us immediately when I see such scenarios, because I've seen them with our customers as well. So try your single log writer switch. Most of our customers have this set, even though it's an underscore. That's our recommendation here, but I can't guarantee that it will solve the issue. But give it a try, and if it solves the issue, let us know via email. That would be very nice. And even
I will definitely. Thank you so much for your help.
Thank you.
Okay, Mem asks, it is ideal to upgrade to 12.2, but if the customer is running eBusiness Suite, they have to upgrade to 12.102 as 12.2 is not certified with EBS yet. Yes, I'm aware of that. Do I have any insider info whether 12.2 is to be certified sometime soon with eBusiness 12.2? Oh, I wish I had that insider info. Again, I check Stephen Chan's blog regularly for that kind of stuff, but you should know by now that Oracle is very tight-lipped about futures because one never knows when a showstopper will come up at some point. You might have all the best intentions to release something on March 1st, and then you get some security issue that takes 6 weeks to fix. So unfortunately, no, I do not have any inside information on that. All I can suggest is keep asking. And ask, especially people like Stephen Chan's blog, ask your account team, and so on.
Yeah. And just I had a discussion with, because I'm right now at a user group conference in the US, and we had a discussion yesterday with 2 customers as well, and their assumption, and this is not ours, their assumption was that EBS seems to skip always the release in the middle. So as they certified with 12.102, they may go with a future version 18 or 19. But neither Roy or I have any additional information on that. So Stephen Chang's blog or his email would be the right way to ask for that.
I think we're out of questions on the chat. Are there any other questions that anybody has for today? Well, seeing no more questions, and it's we had about 10 more minutes, but that's fine. I don't want to hold anyone longer than we need to. What I will do is, if it's okay with everybody, I've collected the questions from chat, and I will add them to our presentation with answers, and then we'll post that presentation on the blog. Of course, I will keep all the questions anonymous since our blog is very public, and I assume that you don't necessarily want your names being broadcast to the world. But we'll put the questions and answers there to capture this for the future as a reference. So thank you, everybody, for participating. I found this very useful, enjoyable.
Yes.
We'll be doing it again in a month, and maybe we'll have some more interesting things to talk about.